630 CHED presents The Announcers. Opinion, personality, passion. The Announcers on 630 CHED, Edmonton's breaking news and conversation station.
Thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Ryan Jespersen, joined by my colleagues and moderately decent friends, Jalen Nye and Andrew Grose.
We need to work on that because I'd like to be your friend.
Moderately decent, does that mean he is
No,
that?
well,
I was going to say good friends, but I don't know either of your middle names.
Oh, that's not the criteria for deciding if
It's not
someone's
hard
your
to
good
figure
friend.
out my middle name.
It's Jennifer Lynn, right?
That's right.
And so did you come up with J apostrophe?
My sister-in-law did. When I went to Regina and I was working at Global Television in Regina, they told me I needed to change my name.
Why?
Because the 6 o'clock news anchor's name was Jennifer Miles, and she had fair skin, blue eyes, and red hair. We didn't look anything alike, but they thought that we might get mistaken for each other, so they asked me to change my name. And that is very awkward when someone asks you to change your name, because what the hell do you come up with?
Well, and also, what are you supposed to read into that? Like, my name's not good enough?
Yeah.
Well, where is she now in her career?
She's not on air anymore.
Jalen had her run into the ground.
Yeah.
She took that career and torpedoed it. Andrew, what's your middle name?
My middle name is Milton.
Milton?
Yes.
That's my Uncle Brent's middle name.
No way.
Yeah.
He's got to be in his...
He's early 60s.
Oh, well, that's named after my grandpa who's long gone. In our family, we always name the male children after down the grandpa line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your middle name starts with a P.
It does.
Patrick?
Paul.
Oh.
Yeah. My dad's middle name is Winston.
That's a great name.
Love. A strong name,
Yeah.
considering when he was born. It makes perfect sense. 1949.
Yeah.
A certain Winston had impressed those in the Western world for quite some time.
Before you leave the topic, though, and talking about being friends.
We got 20 minutes.
Okay. I just want to say my criteria for considering someone a friend is they have to have eaten a meal at my house or I have to have eaten a meal at theirs. And then they're friends.
So is that how you establish who you'll be friends with on Facebook, as an example?
That is exactly how I establish. I had at one time, like many people do, thousands of people because I would say yes to everybody that wanted to be.
Everybody wants to be friends with you.
Well, I think everybody wants to be friends with everybody on Facebook. But one day I got tired of seeing everyone's feed. And thankfully, I did it before this last couple of weeks. But one day I just went through and said, okay, that's the criteria. I have to have had a meal with you. So I would accept a restaurant as a compromise. If we got together and ate a meal at a restaurant, okay. And I weeded it down to, I think, 110, something like that.
Yeah.
This might be kind of a weird thing to talk about at work. But do you two tend to hang out with people from work, outside of work?
Well, we hang out with each other
hang
from
out
time
with
to
each
time.
other,
Yeah. Yeah.
We do actually. We have a really we've hung out numerous times, which is a lot of fun. We invited you and Carrie out for dinner
what's
one
up with
night.
that?
Yeah.
But your parents were in town,
Yeah.
so couldn't make it.
That's
and
what we
then,
told you?
Well, that's what you told me.
love
But
you
actually,
guys.
I think it was true because I
Carrie
saw
and
the
I
pictures.
and Jim and you have hung out a whole bunch of
Yeah,
times.
that's right.
But Andrew and I've met your wife. We haven't hung out yet. I don't know why, but this has always been the case. I've always been less inclined to hang out with work colleagues outside of work, and it's nothing against my work colleagues. It's just that you have another life, and there's other people that are priorities in your lives, and you spend enough time with people here that I don't know. I guess
But we don't spend any time with you.
But that's true. And you know what? And it's actually come back to bite me a little bit, I've found. In my previous employ, as host of a television show, every single Friday, the staff, like the crew of the show, would head out and grab lunch. And I can now say it, because I'm no longer there and the show no longer exists, that it always kind of, I don't want to use the word dramatically, but it always kind of hurt me a little bit that I was never invited to go out for lunch.
You were not invited. How come how could you not be invited?
Yeah,
you were the host
I was never
of the
invited.
show.
Yeah. Right? But maybe that's why I wasn't invited.
Oh.
That's
I don't
so
know.
sad.
People that are tuning in right now going, are these guys serious? They're talking about their Facebook friend groups and middle names, and they're not talking about Syrian refugees. We have a little strategy session before we prepare to tape the announcers, and I think all three of us looked at each other and went, can we take a bit of a break from this?
Yeah.
It's
Particularly,
one long.
It's
long
been a
week.
long. It's a difficult time for a lot of people. It's a difficult time for talk radio for sure to host a show. It's stressful, honestly, and it wears on you. And keeping in mind when this airs, it might be nice to wake up on a Saturday morning and just have a little fun.
Listen to something a little different.
And
half an
maybe
hour.
it doesn't even mean that we have to joke around, because I mean the one thing I didn't get a chance to talk about on my show, and I don't know if the two of you did on the afternoon news, was the story of the Flutie family. And I mean, Canadians, specifically Canadian football fans, know Doug and Darren Flutie very well. I don't know how many knew their parents, Dick and Joan Flutie, but on Wednesday of this week, if you haven't heard, Dick, who had been sick for quite some time, actually succumbed to his illness and passed away less than an hour later. His wife, Joan, also passed unexpectedly. They had been married for 56 years. Doug Flutie in a statement saying, "Thank you for the thoughts. Thank you for the expressions and the outpouring of support." He says, "It's been said you can die of a broken heart, and truly I believe my mother just has."
And you hear stories, and I know there was a story not too long ago about a couple. It was their 75th wedding anniversary, or they had been married 75 years, died within an hour of each other, and sometimes I almost like the thought of that.
Yeah.
If I had been with someone for that long and that in love and had that great of a life, if I couldn't die in their arms together at the same moment, I'm not sure I'd want to go on for much longer without them. And I know people who have. My grandma and grandpa, my gramps died. Grandma lived another 20 years afterwards, and she wore a picture in a heart around her neck of him to the day she died, and I have it now. And she always talked and would, my Bob, that's how to that day. And she missed him so desperately. And I think if there was a way to do it, that might be the way to do it.
It's funny because I thought this would be an unpopular statement, but I'm glad you prefaced my comments with that. When my dad passed away, we all as children worried about my mom because she dedicated her entire life to my dad. And from the time that they met in London during the Second World War until the day that he passed away in their apartment in Ottawa, her only role in life was to care for him.
Yeah.
And we wondered, well, what happens now? And we did all the things that kids do with their older parents. Well, now, Mom, you can get out and you can join a club. She doesn't want to do any of that stuff. She doesn't want to leave the apartment that they shared together. She won't get rid of his clothes.
She's been over 10 years.
Yeah,
she's 93
93,
and she's still living on her own.
10 years ago, my dad passed away, and she's still in the apartment looks identical to the night he passed.
Wow.
And I still worry about her, and yet. And I would have thought for her that would be a thought that she would have, that she'd be happy to have passed on an hour after he did, but she doesn't. She's quite happy to live in that house and remember Dad. She's still dedicated to the memory of my dad, but I don't know what she does all day. It worries me when I think about my own relationship. I'm 9 years older than my wife, and I think, men don't live as long as women, and she could be 20 years without me. If I tell Carol that, she just laughs at me.
She's got a whole plan on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's got nothing but time on her hands to get another guy.
I death has been on my mind a lot lately, more so than it was, let's say, 10 years ago. And I'm not sure if it's happened in the past 5 years since I've married Jim, but I think about what would happen to my life without him, because I don't want to live without him. And this is going to sound really morbid, but I hear songs on the radio. It's like I'm starting to plan now, not plan anything, but plan what would happen if, would you think about getting married again? What would you do for the funeral? Would you be cremated? Where would you get buried? What songs would you play at the funeral? And I don't know why that's been going through my head, but it has been. And I don't know if it's because more people around me, they're starting to lose their parents, or that you're having friends whose maybe partners are having heart attacks or whatever it is, but it's just become more of a reality for me.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Once, somebody enters your life and then subsequently more people enter your lives, and it prompts you to think about these things that you wouldn't otherwise think about. I mean, if I was single, I wouldn't give much thought to whatever happens after I die, because I think there's sort of legal process. And this is not my advice to you if you're tuning in. I'm just saying this is how it would work in my brain. That legal process would determine the allocation of my assets, and I'm not saying I shouldn't have a will, but I'd be less inclined to have one. Now, the minute you get married or you're sharing your life with somebody, whatever the case may be, then you feel prompted to do that, and then you have a kid, and then you think, okay, now I should really take this seriously. All of a sudden, life insurance matters a little bit more. All of a sudden, setting people up past the point of your expiry matters a little more. I had an interesting conversation, an entertaining one, about a serious matter with the friend of mine who ultimately sold us our life insurance policy. And he said, one of the things you want to keep in mind is that these are your loved ones that you're leaving behind, and you want to set them up well enough that they won't have to worry about anything once you pass. But what you don't want to do is set them up so well that they fund the next 30 years of your former partner's new partner's life.
Well, there's certainly no fear of that in my household.
Do you have a will?
No.
Yeah.
We have the will kit.
Yeah, we haven't put together a will yet either. Now, we have the conversation all the time about insurance, who's doing what, like the policies through work and all of that. That's all figured out. But we haven't sat down and actually done a will. And I need to.
Every time.
Jalen, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at you and I'm going, I know that I need to do one too.
You haven't done one
so
either.
Okay. Why? Do we think
It's
that,
so
that
easy.
we're indestructible? Do
No,
we think that
no.
we're going to live forever? Do we have until 80 guaranteed?
No.
No, I know that I need a will, and I know just to make it easier on my wife, and not that I think there'd be any claims against my estate, but it would just make everything easier to file the will, and everything's moved over legally. But every time I go to register my vehicle, I at the AMA, I see that will kit, and I've bought probably 4 of them now, and I bring them home and then go, oh yeah, that's right, I already own one, and they just stack up
Can you
in
bring
my
one
office.
for Ryan and myself?
Oh, I'll bring them in for you. I've never even cracked the seal on it. I don't even know how hard it is. The last time I did something with a lawyer, he mentioned, do you have a will? And I said, no. And, I could do you up a will in half an hour. It's pretty straightforward. You're leaving everything to her. She's leaving everything to you. And yet we never made the appointment. I don't know why.
But I think some people, we call it like the last will and testament, and a lot of people will take that opportunity to communicate very clearly, song selection that they'd like at their funeral, or important messaging, or how they'd like, some of the special family heirlooms to be allocated, or something specific they'd like to see after their passing. And then there are other people that and I'm one of them, that kind of don't really, I don't know. I mean, I care where one of my watches in particular winds up with my son, and I want him to have Grandpa's skates. Yeah. That Grandpa Rudy, who's Wyatt's middle name's namesake, the skates that he wore to skate on left wing and win the provincial championship in the 1930s. Awesome. I mean, there's stories behind that kind of stuff. But I'll take the lead from my grandma Norma, who was buried quite literally in a pine box that all of her children and all of her grandchildren took Sharpie markers to, writing messages, passages of scripture, thoughts, poetry, whatever they wanted before that box was lowered into the ground. Grandma didn't care much about a solid oak casket that cost her estate $11,000. And people feel differently. There's nothing wrong if you'd like to be buried, for all I care, in a casket that costs $30,000.
Yeah.
Your money, your call. But for some people that matters a little bit more, or a little bit less.
But the will is more than that, though. And I'm not a lawyer. Don't write me. But I have been the executor of my sister's estate when she passed away. And the stuff that you're talking about actually does get sorted out really easily, even without a will. Sure. That my sister wanted this to go to her and that to go to him. But it becomes a problem when dealing with her credit cards, or if she doesn't name you as an executor, then you have to go and present yourself and become an executor. If she doesn't give you the proper power of attorney, that kind of thing, it can be a real problem just settling her estate.
And that's the last thing you want, is to just put that in the laps of people that are mourning the loss.
Exactly. I spent a good probably 6 months from start to finish getting that settled. And she was a woman who lived in other people's houses in Salt Spring Island when they were on vacation. And, she would take temporary work when she needed a little money. She had no estate per se. So I can only imagine what it would be like if you have mortgages and lines of credit and assets. She had none of that, and yet it took months to settle her estate. And I'm not even sure now that I settled it correctly. I think some of the companies just gave up.
We had a wills lawyer join us on my show months and months back, and he was reiterating that same message of how important it is to have these. He was telling a few horror stories, because sometimes people, when they you get this epiphany, you get this wake up call, you hear someone else's story and you go, oh, okay, I got to act on this. I've got to act on this. But he was just communicating the importance of it. Yet here the three of us are, none of us have it. Maybe if we revisit this in a month, maybe it'll be a different conversation. This has nothing to do with the Flutie family, but I just find that when we hear stories like that of sudden loss, or a loss of great magnitude, it gets you thinking about your own mortality. It gets you thinking about your own family. How can you think of I mean, I grew up watching Doug Flutie throw incredible passes and watching his brother Darren catch incredible passes. I didn't know anything about their parents, but I know what it would feel like to lose both your parents on the same day.
Yeah, there's a great documentary. Have you ever watched The Football Life? It's on ESPN. I believe it's ESPN, but they do football documentaries, half an hour long on different football players. And there was one on the Flutie family, and it was really great to watch. But it went through his whole challenges, going from the CFL and all that sort of stuff. But again, you think about that and that family connection, and I just can't even. I can't even imagine losing one of my parents. I mean, I've been blessed to have them both, this long, which is great. But I start to think about it. My dad is 72, 73 years old. His dad didn't live much longer than that. So it becomes,
You can really play with your mind on that.
I know, and it's bad.
Yeah, my sister passed away at 55.
Yeah.
And I was 46. And I gave myself a 9-year death sentence. When she passed away, and I thought, well, we live very similar lives. We were both smokers at the time. We were just very similar. And I went and met with my agent to say, I need to get out of comedy. I have a 9-year plan. And then that sort of went away. And then, one day you hit the 55. And you go, "Oof, well, I made it."
Still here, live.
Right, but then you set the next deadline. Well, wait a minute. When did my dad pass away? How old was he? Right? It's when you get a little older. I'm older than both of you. It does come back and haunt you from time to time that these are hard and fast deadlines that you're approaching. But of course, they're really not. And to be honest with you, I never thought I would die of old age. I really didn't. No joke. I just assumed I would die in a fiery crash on a highway somewhere, or I don't know, a jealous husband would, I don't know. I just never thought I would be in my 50s. And here I am.
Jealous husband.
Can we talk more about that?
Yeah, that's very nice. And I wonder, though, and I think this is a part of it, maybe a little bit of an offshoot, but I think until about 40, or for me in the last year especially, health-wise, I didn't, I'd go for the regular checks every once in a while, but then, I started to see some friends of mine, being diagnosed with breast cancer kind of out of the blue and all of a sudden you're getting told, okay, you're 44 now, you need to go do that, but I don't want to do that. I've heard awful stories about having a mammogram and all of that sort of stuff, but you know what? You go and do it. It's not that bad, and you think, oh, phew, because you can work yourself in, but it's the same thing with men having, the prostate exams and all of that. I don't want to do it, don't want to do it, don't want to do it. But isn't that just a little peace of mind?
Well, those
mind
scares,
for the next little bit?
Those scares are very healthy, very healthy. If you think for a second, and again, my sister died of lung cancer, and then at one point I got pneumonia in the last few years, and the x-ray didn't look good, and you start thinking, oh my God, I have lung cancer. So you start thinking about those things that I need to change. If this, you make promises, right? If this turns out not to be true, I'm going to go work out, I'm going to start eating. Scares are good in life to sort of redirect your path, because one day becomes a week, becomes a month, becomes 2 years, and then you realize you haven't worked out in 2 years or 10 years. The scares are good.
I'm not worried about losing weight anymore because I want to look great in a bikini. I want to lose weight because I want to be healthy, and I still want to be dancing with my husband in the kitchen when I'm 70 years old.
Looking great in a bikini.
Looking great in a bikini. That would be the bonus. That'd be the gravy on it all. But that's, things have switched just a little bit more from going from more of an appearance and worrying about how you look thing into just about how you feel and how you're going to be 20 years from now.
Because you start to, aging sort of manifests itself in every decade, right? I remember for me, I'm 38 now, and when you start hearing hockey commentators or football commentators talk about a 38-year-old athlete, they marvel at the fact that athlete can still take to the playing surface. Like at 30, listen how people are talking about Henry Burris, right? His year that he's having in the CFL at 40. They're acting as though Christ is walking on water.
Sure, he's the old man of the
very
CFL.
Eyes. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in Regina working when he started with the Rough Riders, and it was like, oh, hallelujah. We all loved him, and now you're talking like he's an old man. It's like, when did he become an old man?
Hockey players and baseball players, it depends on the position, but once you get into even your early 30s, but your mid 30s, you're signing your goodbye contract typically.
Sure.
And they're sort of easing you off. People are taking a look at some of the veterans on the Edmonton Oilers going, well, he's 36. He can't be playing much longer. And I'm thinking, I'm still a kid. I'm still a juvenile. I'm an adolescent in the brain.
Yeah.
But aging takes that on, and as you get older, I was having a conversation with my mom over the weekend. She said one of her friends was lamenting in their early to mid 60s, my skin is getting more thin. I'm noticing, or you start to see liver spots.
Sure.
Or you start, your metabolism changes, and I think all of these can be and probably should be.
Are you living in my head?
Well, they're all
this
coming.
is my personal testimony.
I know.
Hello, Dr. Leica. It's like
I would
help me.
recommend either of you, if you have those thoughts, phone my mom. Just spend 5 minutes on the phone with my mom, and she'll say things like, "Oh, I would love to be 56."
Yeah, I know.
Sure.
I know. But we've talked about this, is that, you kind of get to that certain age and you look at yourself in the mirror and you think, oh, that looks pretty good. And then you look at yourself in a photograph
Yeah.
and went, what?
Yeah, the older you get, the more important angles become.
And stock photos that you can distribute whenever you need them.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
going through updating your Facebook profile picture. Oh, that one's only from 15
Yeah,
years
I had
ago,
a-
but it
I had
looks
a-
good.
I had a photo that Edmonton photographer Aaron Peterson snapped of me back in 2009. And I love it so much that I still shamelessly use it to this day.
Yeah, I've got
as
an old
my
promo.
Twitter profile photo. Someone came up to me at Rexall Place Wednesday night at the Oilers game and said, "Oh my, you look nothing like your Twitter photo."
Is that
That's true.
Is that your top 40 under 40 picture?
Yeah.
And I'm using the same one, and I'm long past 40 now.
And I didn't know how to respond to, oh my gosh, it's like someone saying, you look so much more slim on television. Well, how do you actually respond to that?
I know.
I don't know. But, these are the types of conversations, and I think probably, at every age you start to reconcile, your own mortality, and people's inner dialogue may be different in their 20s than it is in their 80s. I mean, my dad speaks of his age, and as mentioned, he's 66, but he says right now he's in the autumn of his life, and I thought that was such a beautiful way to put
Yeah.
it.
What's old anymore, though?
I don't know. I mean,
What
what
is
is how you
old
feel
anymore?
about it?
93 is old.
93 is
Yeah.
old, yeah. But you know what? I met a 99-year-old veteran on Remembrance Day named Jack, who had more spunk
Yeah.
than, I think half the men I've met in their 40s.
He put the moves on Jayla and I.
I heard that.
Yeah.
He was. He
Hey
was
man,
something else.
that guy survived bombing missions
Exactly.
in World War II.
Exactly.
Like he hasn't met an encounter. I don't think he's encountered anything.
He's
that
not
scared
afraid
him
of a
off.
big
That
redhead.
guy's always bringing his A game.
So I guess where to from here? I mean, maybe to bring this full circle, we sit and we put ourselves in the position of the Flutie family, and it's a loss of great magnitude. But hey, 56 years of wedded bliss, and I guess we all move forward. Maybe you just embrace the day. Maybe you let the sunshine hit your face a little bit,
Yeah.
spend a little bit more time thinking about it, or maybe you tell somebody today that you haven't told in a while that you love them.
Get out and enjoy it.
Sure.
Spend some time with your parents if they're still around, and
Yeah.
dance in the kitchen tonight a little bit.
you
Sometimes
go.
people's parents call them a little bit more than they're used to, and I had a conversation with a friend. He said to me, one day I'd give anything to have my mom call me twice in one afternoon.
Yeah, fair enough.
Thanks for listening to The Announcers. You can catch Jalen, Nye, Andrew Grose weekdays from 2 to 6. The afternoon news on 6:30. Chet, I'm on the air from 9 to noon. Thanks for being a part of this. We'll see you on Twitter in between. Back at it Monday.